Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is a conversation that we've attempted to schedule multiple times, and now we're finally here. Both of us being D-Gens who had met up in NFT Miami, actually on stage. Like, what a small world it actually was. We were talking about historical NFTs. We both have the love for it. Our directions have changed just a little bit ever since then. I'm here with Michael Lee, the official, unofficial, official mfer. I don't know what to really call him. He's helping out 6529 Capital, and he has his own fund as well called Gondola Capital. So a lot of things to dive into today. Michael, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's fun to see you. And we were mentioning I'm at the office today, so doing this call, I'm not in my typical D-Gen attire, the black hoodie, baseball cap, and maybe jeans, maybe sweatpants. But yeah, it's great to see you as well. Miami was so much fun. That was all the way back in April. It was a blast hanging out with you and Adam McBride and several others. So.
Yeah, we've all taken quite a turn since then. Still have the love for the historics, but the NFT space has changed a lot. We've all changed a lot, right? You're wearing a baseball cap and maybe put some weight on since you're a PFP stick figure that you present as well. But I mentioned in your bio, you're working with 6529 Capital. You have your own capital fund. Tell us who Mr. Lee is outside of what we see on Twitter.
Yeah, so I graduated from college in 2008, and the first thing I did when I got out of college was look for a job, and I ended up, fortunately, a really long story. We said we'll do 45 minutes an hour. The story about how I got the job is probably would take up the entire podcast, but I got an opportunity to work with a fund, hedge fund and private equity fund. In 2008, the summer that I graduated, down in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm from New Jersey, so moved down to Raleigh, first job, and the CIO, the chief investment officer on the first fund that I ever worked for out of college was a guy named Mark Yusko. And Mark Yusko's become pretty prominent and well-known in the crypto space, but predating crypto, his claim to fame was this endowment, this really incredible endowment investor who was number 2 guy at Notre Dame's endowment under Scott Malpass, and then became the CIO at UNC Chapel Hill's endowment, where he was a huge proponent of alternative investments. And so this fund that I got my first job out of school, Mark's the CIO on this fund. And I remember sitting in the conference room like the first week on the job, I'm right out of college, and I hear Mark present, and I was just blown away. At the time, like, crypto wasn't on the radar in 2008, but talking about private equity and institutional investing, like he's a star. And so that was my start in sort of the institutional investment space back in 2008. I never looked back, but then after about a decade at the fund that I started at, I started my own group called Gondola Capital, and Gondola's focus was still alternative investments, private equity mostly, but working with more than one fund at a time. So being able to work with different GPs, general partners on different alternative investment strategies, whether that be crypto or real estate or cannabis or whatever sort of it might be interesting and that I'm excited about. And so that's so left the firm that I started my own firm, and the first fund to hire us, Gondola Capital, was Mark Yusko at Morgan Creek Digital, and that's when they were working on Morgan Creek Digital Fund 2. So, and then you mentioned 6529 Capital on the front end. So a couple months ago, I've known 6529 since the summer of 2021, but they launched the NFT fund, and with my passion for NFTs. And then also, passion for NFTs, but then my IRL kind of institutional investment background, it really became like clear. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Should look at this, because if I'm passionate about something, that's when I feel like I've done my best work. And then we also work in the DeFi space with a group called Powerify Capital, who spun out of KKR. Really just an incredible firm. So it was basically my progression from just raw private equity was Mark Yusko, Morgan Creek Digital, Powerify Capital, DeFi, spun out of KKR, and then adding the NFT fund with 6529 Capital.
Wow, just absolutely all over the place. It's truly incredible. I mean, alternative assets, as you mentioned, you went into it in 2008, and you were working, or you were fascinated by Mark Yusko. For those that don't know, he also a co-founder of Morgan Creek Digital is Anthony Pompliano, which I think most people on the younger side tend to know, and not as much the traditional side. So you've been in the space for a little while. You're kind of branching out to all the different sectors. We'll touch on to 6529 a little bit later, but why have so much conviction in memes and non-fungible tokens when you've been in traditional, and you call TradFi, for over 10 years now? What is the differentiator there that has piqued your interest, and not just from a personal standpoint to where your image and your brand's kind of built around it, but also from like an investment side?
Yeah, I think I've got to say, like, Yusko was a big influence in this. He sent a tweet. We were working together in 2016 when I was a partner at the group that I joined, and he sent a tweet. I'm following his Twitter account, and he said blockchain is going to be huge. And at the time in 2016, I was like, what the hell is blockchain? So I saw this tweet, and then I think the background in that tweet was, Mark had just got done meeting with like Dan Moorhead, who ended up starting Pantera, and Mark was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So like I heard about blockchain in certain ways in 16, but from like my background, if you're going to an endowment, a family office in 2016 and telling them about Bitcoin, they're like, get out of my office. Like, they're going to laugh you out of there. And it just wasn't really, I think, investable at that time. There were a lot of issues around custody and things like that. But Mark was like an early adopter. Even if you go back to the UNC Chapel Hill days, when he started at UNC Chapel Hill in 1999, they had 2% allocated to alternative investments. And by the time he left, it was like 60% in alternatives, and that's hedge funds, private equity, real estate, commodities, energy and natural resources, et cetera. So always on the cutting edge of innovation. And so someone like Mark, who I always looked up to, when I saw him get interested, I'm like, okay, I should probably start paying attention here. And then it kind of dawned on me, it's like, okay, this space has become, as you fast forward from 2016 into like 2018 even, it's like, okay, this space is becoming investable now. And I was already playing around in the space. Like in 17, I started mining for fun, didn't know what I was doing, but just like for fun. Like I had one in my apartment, a miner, an ant miner. And every single day I would get, a little crypto, and then I would just immediately convert it to fiat. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was curious. And but slowly and surely the space started to become more investable, and I was really passionate about it. And when you think of like traditional investments, I think like stocks and bonds, right? Publicly traded stocks and bonds. And then I was never in that space. I was always alternative investments from day one, 08, and that would be categorized as like hedge funds and private equity, and then all the subcategories underneath them. But again, like the passion for, like, I grew this like deep passion for crypto, and it really happened like reading the Bitcoin white paper and really understanding like what Bitcoin is all about. In that white paper, it's not technical per se, it's more philosophical, and it really struck a chord with me. And I think I started to really catch on at that point. But when the space started to become investable, and you start to hear groups like JP Morgan talk about it, and like major groups on the street, I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And if I could combine something that I'm really passionate about, like as a hobby, which it was becoming more and more a hobby in my life, and I could combine that with what I do, like IRL work, that's a good formula for me. And so that was one of the main reasons that I left the firm that I was a partner at for all those years to start Gondola, so I could work on things that I really want to work on, and that was crypto, and how that's evolved over the last 4 years has just been insane. It's just been incredible.
Yeah, there's so many confluences in your life that we'll all dive into, between on-chain monkeys and Ohm and your fund and historical NFTs and 6529. Right. You mentioned that the space is becoming investable, and you've been through all the traditional aspects from the fund side. How do you pitch to a traditional investment fund that stick figures and memes are an investable class? Like what kind of questions do they ask you, and how does it become a professional investment class over time?
So this is like a progression that takes place. So like I said, like 16, 17, Bitcoin, you would have been laughed out of an office. By 2019, family offices and institutions wanted to have the conversation because people were, it just became something that you needed to know what was going on. You needed to start paying attention. But I'd say like 2016 Bitcoin is probably where NFTs are with these same like family offices and institutions. And then 2018 DeFi, it's like Parify. So we started working with them in 2018 and had 30 million in assets under management. Now they're north of $1 billion. But the first 10 months, a year of working with Parify, and I was at some of the largest institutional allocators in the country. They were interested, they were paying attention, but they weren't ready to allocate to DeFi. They're like, yeah, kind of interesting, educate me, we're keeping our eyes on it. And then, after DeFi summer, of course, everyone's like, okay, we want in. It's like performance drives so much. And I think that NFTs are in a similar spot. So if you go back to like that first year working with Parify, I'd be like, man, like this is just like, a lot of people are interested. It feels like we're just out educating folks, but we're not really raising a lot of money. But then what we found is like all the work that you put in doing all of that, like you can't control timing a lot of times, but that wave's coming, and when it does, like it just kind of the switch flips. And so when it comes to NFTs, being able to tokenize culture and make it scarce and transferable is just unbelievable. And like the institutional allocators probably for the most part don't get it yet, but I think that NFTs from an investable asset class are kind of where DeFi was in like 18. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until like 2020 when things really took off with institutions wanting to like actually make large commitments to DeFi. And I think NFTs are there. Like we're in the earliest stages of institutions interested in talking about this because they're hearing about it a lot. But most aren't ready to write that big check yet. But doing all the work today, right now, means that 8 months from now, 9 months from now, a year from now, if things go the way that I think they will, like it'll be all the work that we're doing now will really pay off. And like 6529 Capital, they've done a tremendous job. Like 6529 has some of the best relationships in the industry. So like getting that fund up and running and seeded with capital, like they've done a really great job of that. And I think over the next year, we'll see some institutions really kind of like go out on a limb per se and want to be early allocators or early investors in innovation. If you look at like Fairfax County Pension Fund, they allocated to Morgan Creek's Blockchain Opportunity Fund 1. It was the first U.S. public pension fund to invest in a fund that like utilizes blockchain technology. And at the time, like people were like, these guys are crazy. And like, it's been one of their best performers since, so it's like, there will be some of these institutions that understand the importance of being early in innovation. And like NFTs are kind of on that cusp. I still think it's early for the institutional allocator, for the majority of them, but that wave is coming and I see it building. It's like, we've seen this movie before and it has a really good ending. And, being early allocators of innovation has tended to pay off like throughout history.
It's funny how the same trend tends to emerge in crypto year after year. It's like when you first discovered Bitcoin in 2014, it goes up and you're like, man, I should have bought it, right? And depreciates. And you're like, man, I should probably allocate it. And then Ethereum comes on and you're like, yeah, I don't know about it. Price pumps and then it depreciates and you're like, yeah, I should have allocated. Then DeFi happens. And now I think that the trend is obvious that there's a new classification or there's a new technology in crypto that tends to pop up every few years. And maybe this is the time now that some institutions and capital allocators are like, hey, I've seen this story written on the wall many, many times. Because with NFTs, I don't think I've ever seen, and I've been in the space around the same time since you have, I've never seen the mainstream hop on a portion of crypto so fast than it is with NFTs, between the media companies and just even the crypto natives who were just investors into fungible tokens or cryptocurrencies have mostly migrated to NFTs now. It's not just a secular trend anymore. I think those who've watched crypto are saying that I've seen this story and I want to hop on and I'm going to start paying attention. And it sounds like that's kind of what your conversations are with some of these funds.
Well, yeah. And like even myself. So like if you go back to the early days of me learning of Bitcoin at first, when I first heard it, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. This sounds like a scam almost. It was like so early for me but it was really like looking back on it, it was really intellectually dishonest to think like that because I didn't do the work, to actually understand it. I'm like, oh, Bitcoin, yeah, like that's a scam. And a similar thing happened to me with DeFi. Like when I start to catch the DeFi wave, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Like this seems like it could be a scam, but I didn't do the work, right? I didn't do the work. It's intellectually dishonest. Now, like with NFTs, I thought the same exact thing. I'm like, yeah, like stick figure JPEGs. Like, are you kidding me? I saw like Bored Ape Yacht Club, like going to the moon. I'm like, this is total bullshit. Like but then I had like start to remind myself, I'm like, okay, like it's intellectually dishonest to respond like that immediately unless you do the work. And I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at that. Like before just saying, oh, that's bullshit, actually saying, okay, interesting. Let me do some work. And then I'll say whether that's bullshit or not. And, once I like got Bitcoin, I was like, oh my gosh, incredible. Like read the white paper. Most people that read the white paper come away like, wow, interesting. Same with DeFi, make a swap on Uniswap, use that exchange. You're like, holy shit, like I get it, become a user. And you're like, wow, this is crazy. And then same with NFTs, like, buy an NFT, like on-chain monkey, like one of my first NFTs, because I knew of Danny Yang and Bill Tai, like the guys that started this whole thing. And a guy named Ryan Betancourt, who lives in Durham, he's the CEO of Rare Earth Foods. It's a alternative protein food for pets. And I knew this guy named Nick Cooney who was running an alternative protein fund, and I knew Ryan as the CEO of this alternative pet protein fund. And I saw his Twitter one day. We follow each other, like we've met before, and I saw his Twitter. It was this monkey JPEG, and it was an on-chain monkey. I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is Ryan up to? And I look, and I'm like, okay, it's an on-chain monkey, and I'm like, if Ryan bought one of these, like maybe I should look into it. And I looked into it. On-chain monkey launched September 11th, 2021. On like September 13th, I'm looking, Ryan, I see his PFP. I'm looking into it. I'm like, you know what? Like I've seen enough about NFTs. Ryan bought one. I'm going to go buy an on-chain monkey. So I went and bought an on-chain monkey, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. Post about it on Twitter. Everyone's like, hey, welcome. I'm like, what? This is so interesting. And I've got to say, like on-chain monkey was like that eye opener for me. I'm like, okay, there are real people that like I respect in industry who are building things here. And I still didn't quite fully understand, but it was enough for me to say, like, this is really neat. And then you go full circle. A month ago, Yusko invested into MetaGood, the parent company of On-Chain Monkey, and he changed his PFP to an On-Chain Monkey. And I'm like, Mark had a saying that I've used before. He's like, early is the euphemism for wrong. He's like, we were early. He's like, early is the euphemism for wrong. It's like, well, like I was early with, like I beat Mark once now. I was earlier than him one time, and that was with On-Chain Monkey and maybe NFTs. And I have a 6529 Yusko story as well. I was over at Yusko's house, and I was talking to him about NFTs. This is before he bought his On-Chain Monkey, before he invested. And I brought him I brought him an On-Chain Monkey hat, and I brought him Adam McBride's book. This is shortly after Miami. So I'm like, Mark, we got to do a fund. Like, we have to do an NFT fund. It's like, yeah, NFT fund. I don't know. So I'm sitting in his backyard at his house, and I pull up my laptop, and I showed him OM. And because in OM, the museum district, one of the buildings, one of the museums is dedicated to 6529 Fund Season 1. So you could go and enter this museum and look at all of the holdings in Fund 1, in Season 1. And when you see it, it's like, okay, you show someone, let's say I go to a family office and I show them that collects art, and I show them my OpenSea wallet. And I'm like, hey, take a look at all this cool art that I own. They're like, what? You take them into OM and you bring them into a museum where it's like immersive, and you could see the pieces up on the wall and you could interact with and engage with those pieces. It really is like a light bulb moment. It's like, okay, I'm starting to get this now. And I think, Mark gets it, and he pays attention. So, but yeah, those are some like light bulb moments for me, and like people I've interacted with in the space.
You mentioned as you're discussing some sort of like alternative protein fund, you're working with 6529 Capital. His fund and the things that he's allocated has been kind of across every NFT classification. He has historical NFTs, he has art, he has the art blocks, he has his own meme collection. Do we think those funds who are going to dive into NFTs and curate a fund, how do they approach it? Is it just going to be a generalized NFT fund? Do you think they go after art first? Is it going to be historical NFTs? Or do they just dive right in and just go straight for CCO meme culture? How do you view that? And then what are those conversations that you've had ongoing?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. I mean, you look at like what 6529 and those guys are building, like right now, I think the focus is on like ultra grail works, like X copies and things like that, and autoglyphs and squiggles and things that they're looking out there. You know, there's something culturally relevant and significant about them, and then also like in the early days, there's like some PFP projects as well. But I think that there's less of an emphasis now on some of the PFP projects and more of an emphasis on art. There's some other NFT funds that have popped up as well, that have like slightly different mandates. What I do think is like the mandates will look different across different funds and different strategies. And then depending on access as well, it's like, a lot of these pieces, you need to know the right people. Like you need to know where the bodies lie to be able to access certain pieces. And you need to know the collectors that currently have them and want to sell them, maybe on a quarterly basis. People are, you kind of have to know the people. So I think that like each fund will have like a slightly different tilt. But one thing I'm pretty certain of is, now this is like, again, it's like going back like 2018 PowerFi, leaving KKR, starting a DeFi fund. They were one of the first to do it. And but also like with a really deep institutional background. If you fast forward to today, end of 2022, almost 2023, I mean, the number of DeFi funds, you like the spreadsheet is forever, right? There's so many. There are a few notable NFT funds right now, with 6529, in my opinion, like being the class of that because of the team of collectors they've built, because of the access that they have. But if you fast forward 5 years from now, I mean, the number of NFT funds out there will be so many, with so many different mandates and so many different strategies, like some maybe purely private equity focused where they're investing only in the equity of companies like Yuga or the companies that focus on the NFT space. There'll be some that focus on the tokens. There'll be some that combine like 80% tokens, 20% equity. So the makeups will be different. The space, like we said, since April, it was 8 months ago we were together, how the world has changed and the space has changed drastically. I think we'll see the same thing in like the NFT space.
Is there any type of like regulatory friction or hurdles that funds have to overcome to investing in DeFi and NFTs? And is there any differences between any of the crypto classifications between those two that makes either more preferable from an institutional standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, so if you like sit down with an institutional allocator and you go and talk to them about, okay, I've got an NFT fund and we invest in the equity of companies that are heavily involved in the space. Like every institution out there is going to be comfortable with making equity investments. Like they've been making private equity and venture capital investments for as long as the institution's been up and running for the most part. When it comes to tokens, it's a different discussion. And like for for investors to wrap their arms around like the token concept is definitely new. But like the institutions that were early with DeFi, like they're looking at NFTs, they'll be quicker to sort of take on that same sort of risk. You mentioned regulation, like it's constantly evolving. There are a ton of gray areas. I think like from the funds that I work with and myself, there aren't many things. Forget crypto. Like just looking at investing, like there aren't many things that could really like shut a fund down. Obviously, like performance is one, but regulation is the biggest thing to focus on. So like having good regulatory systems in place, working with the right compliance folks. There's some incredible groups out there that are really like good at this space and have been early in this space and understanding the regulatory frameworks. Like that's of the utmost importance. And you don't just see it with funds, but you see it with the companies like Yuga, with some of the recent things that they've done, and like staking in the U.S. and not allowing that on their front end. Like everyone, like I commend Yuga for doing that, because there's not many things that could blow Yuga up. Regulation compliance is one of them. And so to be laser focused on that is actually like being a good steward of your collectors or your investors, whatever it may be. And but there's so much gray area right now as well. So I think a lot of folks may be like, hey, it's like a wait and see in a lot of cases. Like, we know regulation's coming, let's kind of wait and see. But you look at like a group like PowerFi and DeFi, how far that space has come. Like PowerFi is registered as a registered investment advisor in the United States. Like their compliance and regulatory framework is as good as a KKR. Like it's that good. So, but at the same time, everyone's waiting for regulatory change or clarity, I think, in a lot of cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we even just saw recently with the Artifact and Nike monolith drop that the geofencing of only allowing shipment into the United States from their international counterparts is quite interesting, because they haven't really even stated what that regulatory hurdle is. We just know now that it exists, and it's hurting their customer base. And so there is a lot of that's going to be going back and forth. But now we've been talking about funds, but now we could get into the fun stuff. As we were in Miami again, as we mentioned, you were really high on these stick figures, and of course we were on stage talking about historical NFTs, and we've begun to see this kind of with different people in the historical space kind of always have that grounding and that interest in these like old assets, because as we mentioned, it'll be easier to pitch to these funds about these gems and relics of the old age and provenance and so forth. But then you dove down and you went into this mfers, and there's a bunch of controversy. What is it about them that's quite interesting, even outside of the quote unquote rug pull, depending on who is viewing it, of sartoshi walking away? But you've kind of really just taken the reins, you and it seems like a handful of people, and have created unofficial mfers and now rare mfers, and now there's kind of a flourishing scene. What is it that interests you about the project that's kept you there even through the turmoil?
Yeah, I think like it's so interesting, because back in April, we're in Miami and we're talking about mfers, and where mfers were in April compared to where they are, it's like totally different, right? We had this founder named Sartoshi, who was this incredible memer, and beloved by so many folks on crypto Twitter, and just a funny account that would post memes. And that's how this account got to 300 or 400,000 followers, however many it was. And like the idea around mfers, I guess on the initial drop, was that there's certain ethos, like mfers do what they want, one mfer equals one mfer, all of these mfers just getting started, like all of these little sayings that people can kind of rally behind. And I think like the mfers do what they want ethos is, there's like maybe that like everyone has that a little bit inside of them. And now if you look, so like you met like Sartoshi on 6ix9ine wrote a Medium article. We woke up to the fact that he was going to be departing the scene, deleting his Twitter account, and we're not going to hear from him again. And but in doing so, would be giving the mFers contract to the community, royalties to the community, and basically like go build what you want. And I think the promise of crypto and the promise of Web3 and the promise of like decentralization is that relying on a single figurehead or key man risk isn't really like the promise of crypto. And when you look at a lot of the NFT projects out there, there is this founders team and there's a team behind it. And like we've seen it, all the time. It's like when token, when Metaverse land, when merch drop, when. And for MFers, it's like, go build it. Like, go do it. If you want to, like, just go do it. You don't have to ask permission. You don't have any key man risk or execution risk. Is if there's enough people that believe in this ethos and want to build on top of it, go and do it. And you think about like Sartoshi ultimately was a meme. The founder of Bitcoin's name is Satoshi Nakamoto. You know that. Everyone listening to this knows that. That name Sartoshi, it's there for a reason. And a good friend of mine in the mfer space, Breezy, he put out a tweet well before Sartoshi's departure. He actually did an interview with Sartoshi. It was one of the only recorded interviews ever, not voice, but in Medium. And in that Medium article interview, after Breezy gave his own commentary, he said, this was a great discussion, whatever he said. But I have a feeling at some point Sartoshi is going to complete the meme, and completing the meme. And he said, complete the meme by departing. And when he put that out, we all talked about it a lot. And I was like, yeah, I agree. And I even said, like, 3 weeks prior to 6ix9ine, I was like, when Sartoshi left, I was talking with Breezy in like a DM, and I was like, I agree. I think he's going to depart at some point, but I don't think now's the right time. It's like, and then 3 weeks later, boom. So it's like, well, when is the right time? Who knows? But it's pretty remarkable to see what's taken place since. We had a great party at NFT NYC, and with 300 people at this great spot in Brooklyn, like all community led. We had an activation at NFT London, all community led. We just had MFers on a boat for 5 straight days in Miami at Basel. Like, unfortunately, I couldn't be there because both you and I know when we're in Miami, we're getting work done.
Oh man!
So I had to, yeah. So like I had to skip this year because I had too much shit going on. But the community has rallied behind this idea. And I think it really hits on the ethos and the promise of crypto and Web3 and decentralization, that you don't need this, person at the top that's calling the shots. We can call the shots, and we have resources now to do so. And we're trying to figure out the best way to use those resources and apply those resources. But it's not even about the resources of like a treasury. Like, we were fine without a treasury. Now all of a sudden we have one. It's like, okay, let's figure out like what are the cool things that we could do to proliferate the meme, because if the meme survives, then everything else kind of just works itself out. If we let the meme die and we don't tell the story, then it all dies. And there's a saying that a good friend of mine uses, and I use it now as well. And it's like, if you don't record culture, if you don't record history, then you're at the potential of losing it. And so right now, I think the mission around like myself and a lot of people in the community is finding ways to record the history and culture of MFers. It's a really incredible one, and to proliferate that meme and allow that meme to survive. And I think that ultimately, like, MFers are one of the most incredible experiments in Web3 NFTs today, like, period. And then I've got On-Chain Monkey, love what they're doing. And then I have his historical stuff, like crypto cards, Pepe's, and stuff that I know. I'm like, lock it away. Come talk to me in 10 years. I feel like I'm going to be in a good spot. But
yeah, you're really just diving into the memes. I would say MFers are probably the strongest CCO community or decentralized one. I know was it Cryptodes was around there at the time. But one of the, like, I guess the counter arguments to this whole thing was the way that Sartoshi left. Yes, everyone could theorize that he was going to leave, and the memes and, you know, this anonymous nature. He did have that unlimited, no, it wasn't unlimited. It was an open edition mint. And then he also, I believe, took a percentage of the royalty fees in perpetuity. How did the community overcome that? And do you think it's left a permanent stain from some of the outsiders that's preventing them to come in and participate in this flourishing community that's kind of revitalized itself over the last 6 months?
Yeah. So the open edition, some people are like, they hate it. They're like, what a cash grab. Me, I love it. I'm like, you know, that same Medium article on 6ix9ine that was put out, Sartoshi said in the Medium article, I'm going to have an open edition. Here's the cost. I'm going to delete my Twitter account at some point during the mint, and this will be the last art that's under Sartoshi. So for an open edition to say like, hey, look, call it a rug or whatever you want, like I'm departing, like he is very clear, like very, very specifically clear, like this is it, like do what you want with it. So I think to be a rug, I think there has to be some form of misrepresentation. And I don't think, you know, looking back on Sartoshi's communication, there was ever any misrepresentation of what his plans were, what he was looking to do. So I'm like, hey man, congrats. You found a way to captivate a large amount of people that are willing to pay for your art. And even if the open edition is performance art, people were willing to pay for it with complete transparency. So like in my eyes, I'm like, hey, cool. Like the open edition is great. When it comes to the royalties, so we hold the contract now. Like we could do whatever we want with the royalties. We could strip Sartoshi of the royalties. We can do whatever we want. And it's our contract. And up to this point, we've chosen not to, because it's almost funnier to us. Like we talked about in the community, like we don't need the money. It's not about the money. Like, and it pisses people off. Like people on Twitter, like, you know, Brian Brinkman yesterday tweeted, Sartoshi is up there with SBF. And it's so funny because it's like, we have this thing like in mfers are called like mfer fade shop. And we've like, people have made pictures of a barber shop and we're like, you know, if anybody like fuds mfers, like we go in with memes, all good, clean, lighthearted fun. Like it's never about, but it's like, you know, when people stop talking about us, that's when I'm going to start to worry. So it's like right now people could like FUD that Sartoshi's still getting royalties. We're like, great, like keep sending them. Like, it's not that, it's just, it was never about a treasury. It was never about the money. It was about the meme. And the fact that we can, like, that's probably like one of the biggest FUD things that comes in is about that. And for now, it's like, I feel like it gives us like, it gives us an opportunity to like engage with like OSF. Absolutely hilarious. Like, so OSF tweeted something, this is pre-NFT London. Someone tweeted like, yeah, that guy Sartoshi rugged us on the open edition. And OSF responded, sad thing is I minted one. And the MFers like came in with like the fade shop and were like just wrecking OSF with the memes. And he like, I was DMing with him and he's like, dude, this is fucking hilarious. And he was like, in public, he's like, I got wrecked by the memes. And like, Farouk commented, he's like, I'm sorry about my co-host. Like, he does not know he doesn't know what he's talking about. So it like became this really funny thing. And then I'm in London and like at this, you know, OSF and I decided like we met up and we're having a beer, like almost in tears laughing about that day. Like the sad thing is I minted one day. And so, I mean, I think it actually helps perpetuate the meme. And like we'll at some point, royalties not go to Sartoshi. I have no idea. Like, but for me personally, I'm like, I don't care. Like, I really don't. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. We're not, you know, MFers are built a little different. Like, and you know, we're not running a business per se. We're running a meme factory, and if we can keep that meme alive, I think I think history will be on our side, like looking back years from now.
I would say you guys are definitely controlling the memes of production, as 6529 would say, which also interludes into his collection, which is the meme collection, and how it appears, and maybe you could correct this, is that the mfer community was really the first NFT community to really come in full force and participate in his open metaverse. How has that gone since then? And did that help you make that connection to 6529 for the fund? Was that through your participation of jumping roof to roof? And I was watching all the different DJ events on the roof and things that you were doing. Is that how that connection made? And how has that collaboration been over the last, I thought it was like 6 months or so?
Yeah. So last October, 2021, 6529 started to build out galleries that were going to be part of the museum district in the open metaverse. And one of the galleries was the Temple of GM. So inside of that gallery is all art that includes the letters GM somehow. And there's like some incredibly creative ones. There's like, girls on a beach, like 15 girls that contorted their bodies to make the letters GM. There's, a guy on a boat like that, has the boat situated to look like GM. And 6529 put out a tweet back in 2021. We're curating the GM gallery. Submit your, put your submissions here, and we're going to select, 96. There's 96 slots in the gallery, and we're going to select 96, and I'll buy the ones that we select for 0.1 ETH. So he's like curating the gallery and curating artists from Twitter, basically. So I've never made like any digital art before, and I was like, you know what, like fuck it, I'm going to try to make like a piece of GM art. And I ended up making this piece of GM art on my phone, and I submitted it. It got collected and it got put in the gallery. At the time, I didn't know that gallery would be in OM. I didn't know that would be part of the museum district. I was like, oh, cool. Like, I got a piece of art put in the gallery that 6529 was building. And then on April 16th, this year, 2022, the tweet came out that OM was opening, right? It's open. Click the link, join, come check it out. So I was day one, I went into OM and I saw this Temple of GM and I'm like, holy shit, like, wait, I think so. I go in and I'm like, there's my piece. I'm like, holy shit, you've got to be kidding me. And I'm not an artist. Like like, this is crazy. So that opening day I was in OM and I learned how to jump. And then like people were up on the roof that first day. Like people were up there before I was. And like, how do you get up there? Like you saw all these people up there. And then I learned how to jump up there that first day. I got up on the roof. And I always said to myself, I'm not like a metaverse guy. Like I was like, I'm not going to hang in the metaverse. I want to hang out in Miami. Like, I want to hang out with real people. Like, I don't want to be in the metaverse, like wearing a Oculus headset. Like that's not for me. But I didn't, again, here's one of those other things. I didn't, the actual understanding and being a user, that from that first moment I walked into OM, I was like, holy shit, the metaverse is cool. Like this is neat. This is awesome. And so then after I realized you can get on the roof, I'm like, well, what else can I do jumping around in here? And I'm not a gamer, but like, I don't do game. Like so like a lot of people thought I was this like gamer that like knew how to like, and I was like, no, like I just know hit the space bar and like, and I've got some free time to go jump around. So I start making the videos, like these jump videos in the open metaverse, jumping on, from the roof to Tulip Gates, the Fidenzas, like, doing all this crazy stuff. And 6529, so, you obviously collected a piece of mine back in October. So, but did that put me on his radar? Probably not. There were like a lot of things going on at that point. But I think how I got on his radar was doing those jumps and recording them, putting some music behind it, and then he would retweet it. And that's how I got on his radar. And then at some point, like I just sent him a note and I was like, hey, like jumping on roofs isn't the only thing I do. Like I've been in private equity and hedge funds for a decade and, would love to talk to you further. And because I was on his radar at that point, him responding to me was a lot easier than just some random person. And that led to like some discussions about what I do, what they're doing, what they're looking to build. Are there synergies? and then that led to, yeah, like let's work together on this, and now here we are today. Yeah, and then the meme card collection is, I think, a really awesome idea that inspired me, like for the rare mfers collection, which were all inspired by Pepe, like, you know, rare Pepes. And it's like, so yeah, it's like Robness had a drop today, you know. Robness did a meme card for 6529, and his card was today. It's like, it's just crazy how all this stuff works.
Yeah, the I was telling you right before we record, the airdrop that I won was the SBF. It's very similar to the Mount Gox card, which is the number 2 rare
Series
Pepe
1 card ever.
Yeah. It's very, very similar. Same colors,
same supply.
Same supply. Yeah, it's truly, truly awesome. That's why I decided to keep it. Rare MFers. I also shared a tweet about how a lot of these collections are almost derivatives of rare Pepe. You have rare Pepe that started, then you have fake rares, you have rare Doge, you have Fosogs, right? They're all these like community curated card or collections that generally have some sort of rare Pepe scientist or some sort of board that approves it, and then the individual creates the art and the supply, and they get to keep the card and sell it and distribute it any way they want. Is this how Rare MFers is working? Are you just following a similar Rare Pepe path, or is there a specific vision and goal for this new endeavor for MFers?
Yeah, so I follow, like, you know this, like I love Rare Pepe. Is like they're just incredible to me. Like the history behind them, the memes behind them, and the meme value. Like some of my favorite Pepes like will probably never be really valuable, but there's just like the meme value will last forever. Like Debate Pepe is one of them. I'm just like, man, like that marks an era in time. Like Trump, Hillary on a Pepe. I think that's Series 1 card 43. But like that, like I love those memes, and like how you can capture sort of this piece of culture, and then also have it become scarce and transferable. And obviously scarcity is different. Like 1500 is a lot different than 100, and value kind of follows that. But yeah, like rare MFers, going back to like, how do you not only protect the meme, but how do you proliferate the meme? But then how do you document culture and history along the way? I think that's all the idea of rare MFers. And it's also like the MFers community has so many artists that are just some amazing artists. And I'm like, if we could find a way to get them involved in this as well and make it really community led. So myself and Master Chan are curating season 1, and then Breezy we're just gonna pass it on to him, and he's gonna curate season 2, and hopefully this becomes just like a really fun thing for the MFers community over time. But yeah, I mean, it's a page out of Rare Pepe's book, 1,000%. I mean, is it a Rare Pepe derivative? Yeah, the idea is derived from what Rare Pepe has built in the earliest days of crypto art, which is just fascinating. So if MFers are something 5-10 years from now, hopefully this collection can bring in a ton of artists. And what I also found, a ton of artists, and also document a lot of the history and culture. Like season 1 card 1 was done by Ray, who's just an incredible artist, but he had over 150 derivatives, thousands of frames, his own music produced. Like it is a piece of history of MFers. So, and it's been great to see what some of the community artists have like come up with. And so if MFers work and that meme survives, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I think that this could be something neat. And also, like who knows what comes of it, going forward. Like we're building out like a arts and culture treasury where a portion, like all of the proceeds outside of the artist proceeds, went to that for card 1, where we could use that to proliferate the meme from arts culture for MFers, whether it's a boat in Miami or an MFers meetup in London, whatever that may be, or a hardcover coffee table book at the end of season 1 that people can claim and now have a physical sort of like book with all of the cards from the season. Who knows where it'll go, but like Sartoshi said in his "What Are MFers," what his idea was is let's plant seeds and see where they grow, rather than having a top figure say, "Hey, we're going right. Who's with me?" It's like, let's plant the seeds, get the seeds out there, and then let's see where they grow. I think that's the same idea here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a true distributed community that is trying to abide by that. How is the governance actually operating as it? I'm assuming after Sartoshi left, I didn't follow it too closely for a few months. There's probably some sort of inner turmoil, maybe some people jockeying for position to figure out how to operate the distribution and come up with their own plan. Has the community turned into kind of what's similar with DAOs, where there's kind of, it's not a one top leader. There's just like kind of this board that people look to for advice, and then it's kind of voted upon there. Is it one person gets one vote? And how do you see the future of the governance for MFers over not just the community funds, but project creation as well?
Yeah. So in that Medium article, when Sartoshi departed on June 9th, like the first paragraph was, "I'm departing." The second one was, "We're going to transfer the contract and royalties to the community." And then he named the 7 people that were on this multi-sig that was pre-set up, but really didn't have any money. And he said, I trust these folks basically. And that's what we're going to do. And so there were 7 of us, and 2 of them have dropped. So there's 5 people on the multi-sig right now. And pre-Sartoshi's departure, the way it worked is like a very standard sort of governance model where you have proposals and snapshot, and we funded things like the party in New York City, a donation to Ukraine when that was all getting started. We funded a pop-up exhibit in Shanghai, China, that a couple Chinese MFers had set up, and all through the just a basic proposal system, and then voting through snapshot. Like the way that we look at it now, like we don't have a huge treasury, but it's growing. And right now it's like, there were so many, I think there was like in the earliest of days after 6ix9ine, like so much, like once money is introduced to the picture, everyone starts going crazy. It's like, where's the money? What are you doing with the money? Who's calling the shots? And I think like the MFer way is really to not have anyone calling the shots. It is to be like decentralized. And so we're still trying to figure out the best ways to kind of execute on that. We've looked to Nouns and how they do things, and Prop House, and we actually did a round on Prop House. So like experimenting with that. But it's funny, like the Nounders put out a tweet recently saying like, it's not about the treasury. And like, until we have like a lot of money, like 500 million is the number they used. Like we can't really like affect much. And so I'm sitting here thinking, like, this is what I've been telling like the MFers for a while. It's like, kind of a couple $100,000. Like, let's just let that thing grow and then figure it out from there. Because it's really not about the money. It's about the meme. But if we could find ways to use the money to help proliferate that meme, great. But then you look at like something like Rare MFers, it's separate from the main treasury. And we've got 2 people, myself, Master Chan, and actually like Breezy, who's going to do season 2. If someone needs capital for a boat, like we're not doing the proposal process. We're just giving them, like we're just going to give it to them. But if we did that with the big treasury, people are like, what's the process? Like, you've got to have a defined process. And so like, that's like the Titanic. And then what we're finding, like the main treasury is like the Titanic. And then what we're finding are like, there's a lot of community members that are building these smaller like nodes per se, that can go out and do things without having like this whole bureaucratic like governance framework built within, which ultimately the large treasury will ultimately probably look like, because as it grows, that does become a little bit more important to have a little bit more structure around it. So for now, like the honest answer, like we're still figuring it out.
MFers being MFers. Gotta absolutely love it. Before we get out of here, I mean, we're the depths of the bear market. What's your perspective of the outlook for 2023? I know it seems far away. It's a few weeks. Who knows what can really happen, right? When you think about what happened this entire year, we had the collapse of pretty much, it felt like everything that had some sort of infrastructure. We lost some of the leaders. We learned that there was a lot of LARPs out there. What's the outlook for how do you see the crypto industry growing or stagnating over 2023?
Yeah, it's so tough to say, but like thinking about this year, it's like we continually learn, like you just mentioned, and back in the summer when Terra, Terra Luna and 3AC, and Voyager, like when all of those problems were coming up, like if you would have asked me at the time, because I'm talking with investors that like have put capital into this space, not into any of those names I just mentioned, but have put capital into the space, those were tough and pretty dark days. And like in the summer, if you would have asked me, I'm like, man, like this is like the worst. Like I can't imagine it any worse than this. Like, having to have these discussions right now. So when you're going through like bad times, you think it's the worst. And then next thing you know, you have an FTX, and it's like, okay, like that wasn't that bad. This summer, like that was like a Sunday school picnic. Like that wasn't that bad at all. Because now you see like what's happening with FTX and the contagion, and then also just the black eye. Like it's kind of embarrassing to the industry to see something like that happen. So you can't like predict these black swan events. But the other thing is that you're going back to 2008 when I started in the industry. Bernie Madoff was the headline in 2008, and Yusko said this at the time, and it's crazy. Fast forward all these years, how this stuff repeats. But the hedge fund industry took the rap for Bernie Madoff. Like it was, hedge funds have failed. Look at this, look what happened with Bernie Madoff. And Yusko was like, what do you hedge fund? Like, why are hedge funds taking the rap? Like Bernie Madoff was not a hedge fund. Like there was no hedge, there was no fund. The guy didn't make a trade in 10 years. This is a bad guy. Like this is fraud. This is a bad guy problem, not a hedge fund problem. And now crypto is experiencing a very similar thing. It's like, look at crypto. Look how bad like crypto's bad. Like, but is it really, or is it just a bad guy? Because I know the builders that are like doing things that are incredible in the space, people building decentralized protocols, like that are really changing the world, and people don't even know yet. Like those are the people that will emerge. The cream will rise to the top. Timing all of that stuff is tough, but I do like FTX and everything that happened this year. It doesn't extend the bear market and make it longer. It condenses it and makes it shorter. So like we'll have these events where these bad actors get wiped out. The people building will rise to the top, but the timing on all of that is tough. But like looking into 2023, like I'm optimistic by nature. So in 2022, like it's going to be the best year yet, and it was a great year. It really was. Like, yeah, it's like the numbers suck, but I know what's going on behind the scenes. And I know like crypto's about survival, and the people that have survived and didn't overextend themselves and didn't use leverage, like, and are building still, they're going to be here and even stronger in 2023. Do the tides turn from like a numbers standpoint, a performance standpoint? That's so tough to tell. It's so tough to figure out. But I do think going into 2023, like outside of like performance and numbers, I think that the human capital is going to continue to go up in 2023. And I think it's going to be pretty exponential.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say in 2018, the only thing I really had conviction in was Bitcoin coming back. And even back then, there wasn't that many people. It felt like it was going to be a long and lengthy time before it ever recovered. And turns out we got DeFi from that. And then some NFTs were starting to build their communities. So who knows what it's going to be, but it definitely feels different this time around, even with getting all of the bad actors wiped out. The community is much stronger. And I think now because of NFTs, there's a cultural layer that is now glaringly obvious. And it's not just a social, as a layer zero that some people like to call it. It's truly just now the culture of crypto in general that's going to keep it alive and flourishing. So I'm actually very excited. We've both taken two different directions, but very similar. Now we're all with different businesses. So I'm excited. Michael, thanks for joining me. As I said, we finally got to do this. Very excited. I know we'll be running into each other again, maybe in New York, or who knows where it is next year. But I know whenever you're out in Vegas, you're going to hit me up.
Of course, and I know you're speaking at NFT NYC. I saw that announcement, and I am as well. So we'll be together in New York for sure.
Ooh, let's go. All right, I'm excited. Thank you guys for listening and watching. We'll catch you next time.